proceed. Well, may you develop the idea of Krishna. May you so by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it's quite an honor to be here amongst such an auspicious school. And really I don't have much to say because everything has been said. And my very colleagues and auspicious guests. And particularly I would congratulate the sisters. Our sisters are always they're always more attentive, they're always more participant. And Allah bless you all, and you have a tougher. I think it's very interesting. It seems to be a paradox, but actually it's very logical. But on the face of it, when we look at the people who are accepting Islam, number one, then from the demographics, the people who are accepting Islam, really smack. Back in the day, we became Muslims, the Afro-Americans. And those who were not African-Americans, like me, was like and we were weird. And actually, in those days, Islam was great. I mean, Islam was unknown. We didn't know Muslim, we knew Muslim, M-O-S-L-E, and Muslims. And who are those who don't really know? We heard the name, but nobody knows. Now today, you never heard about Sharia and hijab and jihad and mufti and Harun. But today, all these things are completely resistant. The mainstream news, the whole thing gave a fatwa. So really, and so in Islam is now like it's maybe not as much now, but I mean there was a time that we were the hottest thing in the news, right? I mean, every other headline was the Muslims this, and the Mufti this, and jihad this, and hijab this, and this. But back in those days, it wasn't like that. But looking at the mainstream trend, when it's like, it's my body, I do what I want. It's your body. Really? Your body? The human being, he or she. The human being is basically 60 to 90 trillion cells. Right? And every cell in the body has a similar number of atoms. In other words, every cell, your 60, 70 trillion cells that you have in your body, every one of those cells has trillions of atoms. Just think about that. The greatness, of Allah's subhanahu creation, and the minuteness of His creation, mind-boggling. So when they say this, this is my body, I do what I want. Wait a minute, hang on, folks. Show me one cell in your body that you created and you control, or you even nourish. They said, even the prophets had no authority in anything that took place in this universe. And yet, this is the arrogance of man now, divorced of belief in the divine, divorce in the divine system, and then divorce from any concept of the divine accountability. That's why we see the world that we see. When a man doesn't have taqwa, a person doesn't believe in Allah, he doesn't believe in a system that governs his life. And most importantly, if one doesn't believe that there's going to be an accountability, then man will do whatever he wants, or whatever she wants. It's my body. I do with it what I want. Well, it's not your body, by the way. And not a single atom in this universe belongs to anyone. Lillahi samawat. Lillahi ma fi samawat. It all belongs to us. So in this concept now of being divorced of all, divorced of all guidance and all morality and all ethics, and women have just, it's very interesting that my grandmother, it's not so long, my grandmother, my great grandmothers were the ones who came here on the turn of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century. So you could say my grandmothers, when they were young girls, they all wore dresses down to down to the floor. And they all used to have head coverings. On my father's side, they're Jewish, and all Jewish people used to wear, things on their hair. They used to wear these long. And then on my mother's side, they're Christians, and they all came from Western Europe. And they also had all this long clothing. They were very covered. They had head coverings as well. And in fact, they had veils. And until today, you might notice that still they have this tradition among a lot of peoples on the wedding day, they wear a veil. I don't know what happened before that or after that, but somehow on wedding day, they've kept this tradition. But after that, then it's just my thing. I do what I want to do. Like Nike says, just do it. So you have these, people are just totally, out of control. And these poor women are manipulated. Just there's more than being a sexual attraction. I mean, you really have no worth in society. So now, interestingly, you have all of these young women, right? They want to cover up. They want to cover their head. They want to cover their bodies. They want to cover their faces, even some of them. You know, why in the world did you want to do that? Because we don't want to be public property. We want to be something. We want to be somebody. We want to be something of value. Women have become they're just an object. And so we find that 9 out of 10 people accepting Islam are women. So this is a great bishara, and this is, Allah subhanahu this is the ayat that I read of when Allah subhanahu wants good for somebody. He opens the heart, accept guidance, guides Islam. And it's not like anybody is like, I'm so great and I'm so intelligent and I'm so cool that I became Muslim. There's nothing like that. Allah subhanahu does a special favor. I mean, I'm sitting in this seat and I'm talking about Islam. They call me this, they call me that. I know where I came from. Well, in the street, that with the other one came from. We were, my God, we were lost. Totally. Like they say, out to lunch without a menu. Right? No map, no compass, and so this is so the fact that Allah can guide people like us, like me in particular, it means Allah can guide them. So it's Allah's favor, He guides to whoever He likes. And then furthermore, once Allah guides somebody, opens their heart and they accept Islam, then if Allah wants to further favor them, then makes that person, guides them towards the knowledge of Deen. How Now, since I think everything that I would want to have said has been said much more eloquently, much better, but I thought maybe it might be interesting, and it's kind of a reminder for me and all of us, to see some of the stories of guidance. When Allah wants to guide people and how Allah can guide people. So there were a few examples I just wanted to share, a little bit of our own inspiration. And the first story that I want to share is that there was a brother from New York. His name was Yusuf, Puerto Rican. Do you know Yusuf? I don't know if he's still alive. I remember that. My age, from our days back, he became Muslim in the early 70s. So now back in the early 70s, So, as I said, Islam was not like in the news. There wasn't a lot of Muslims around, and there was no madrasa. There was no Hifz al-Quran. We had in those days, we had one Qari, one Hafid al-Quran, perhaps in the whole country. Qari Maqbul Ilahi. I don't know if anybody's heard of him. Qari Maqbul Ilahi. And this man, everybody who reads Quran in this country is in debt to this individual by the grace of Allah. This fellow, he came here in a Jamaat. He came with the Tablighi Jamaat. He came with the Jamaat back in the, I don't know, 50s or 60s, 60s. And the whole rest of the Jamaat, when they went, and they came by a boat, by the way. They got on a boat and for a couple of months, and then they come here. And when they come here, you don't come and look at Google, where's the nearest masjid? Yeah, where's the halal restaurant? Where's the Hafsa, certified, We used to eat Fatiha sandwiches. You don't know what Fatiha sandwiches are? Well, I'll tell you what they are. So back in those days, there was nothing allowed to eat hard. Even the bread, it had lard in it. Pig fat. That's how they used to make the bread. And it was very hard to find bread that didn't have that lard. So if you found bread, and if you had money to buy it, that was another thing. We didn't have any money because most of us were actually, either musicians or criminals of some sort, or hustlers or something like that. So most of us had to leave that job. We used to all just walk around in the streets of New York. And we used to still sell trinkets in the street. That's how we used to live. Because, we had to leave our professions. You want to call them professions, but so if you found some bread and you had money to buy it, by the way, so then what you would do is, and you didn't find any halal meat or halal anything, so what you do is you read Fatiha, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, and blow it in between the teeth. And that's your Fatiha sandwich. I'm not joking. That's what we used to do. You didn't have halal meat shops. You didn't have halal restaurants. You didn't have masjids. In the whole New York City, you had 3 or 4 masjids. Like, they weren't even really masjid. They were like Islamic Center. You had the Manhattan, the river. And then you had State Street Masjid. And then you had maybe 1 or 2 other musalla kind of places. Now, how many hundreds of masjids you have in New York City? California, there was nothing here. There was nothing. I'm from California. I'm from Southern California. I had to leave here after being a Muslim. I came back. I had to go to New York because there's nothing happening here. So anyway, 1973, we're in State Street, middle of the night, and somebody comes knocking on the door. Now they've gentrified all these places, and now it's kind of nice. But in those days, it was a very rough neighborhood. And in the middle of the night, somebody's going to be knocking on the door. I mean, like, who is this? So you weren't prepared for the worst. Who is it? He said, let me in, I want to become a Muslim. So he came in, this Puerto Rican brother, comes in, and he starts telling us his story. So he says, look, I had a wife, I had kids, I had 2 jobs, I was doing well. And then I got introduced to heroin, started taking heroin. I got addicted, lost my first job, and lost my second job, and lost my wife, my kids, and 8 years has gone down. 8 years has gone by. And he said, I realized, I've lost everything, and I tried my best to try and get off of this habit that has destroyed me. But nothing worked. You went to rehabs, to rehabilitation programs, all that kind of thing. Nothing. Then he saw a picture. Of a Muslim performing sajda. Now, he doesn't know anything about Islam. He doesn't know anything about Quran. He doesn't know, he just sees a picture of a Muslim performing sajda. And our Hispanic community, I think this maybe one, God can give us a better idea, but it seems to me that I haven't met any Hispanic people that are atheists. Do they have any?
Pretty sure they do, but yeah.
Yeah, I never met him,
Yeah.
you know? That's something that's interesting. Same in the Afro-American community. You know, now in Beverly Hills, you'll find a lot of atheists. If you go down in the ghetto, you're not gonna find an atheist. You know, you'll find a lot of other stuff, but you won't find an atheist, right? So this fellow, he says, so I saw this Muslim, he's got his head on the floor. And it struck me that if God is gonna listen to anybody, he's gonna listen to that person. So what did he do? He made sajda. He doesn't know anything about Islam. He doesn't know Salat. He doesn't know anything about Islam. But he sees that a person who's humiliating himself like that in front of God, God's going to listen. So this fellow, the whole night, he spends in sajda. Now, which one of us spent the whole night in sajda? Or an hour, or half an hour for that. But this fellow spends the whole night in sajda. And when the sun came, then he picked his head up. And then he just said, you know what? I don't need heroin anymore. Because in the center, he was praying, oh God, help me, take me off this. And when he had finished the sajda in the morning, he doesn't need heroin. One sajda cured him from an 8-year heroin habit. Now, I don't know if anybody knows it. Hopefully nobody knows anything about that. But that's almost impossible. You know, the percentage of success stories, you know, in these rehabilitation, it's like zero, you know, maybe deficit. I mean, and even if they do get somebody out, generally they fall into the habit, you know, after. So now this fellow, after he realizes this prostration, this sajda has such a power. So what about the religion that this is by? So then he realized this is part of Islam. This is the way the Muslims pray. So now he's roaming around New York. And again, he didn't have Google. Okay, let me Google where the Muslims hang out. You know, where's the Muslim? You know, there's nothing like that. So the guy's he's roaming the whole day around New York City to find a Muslim. Can you imagine that? We can't imagine that. You know. This is what this fellow did. The whole day he's roaming from morning until that night. He's roaming around the 5 boroughs of New York. Finally, somehow, he winds up in the middle of the night, around 12 o'clock at night. He finds himself at State Street Masjid. And he comes in and he tells us his story. Lord. So then we told him, so you know Maulana Zubair, right? So his brother Khalid was, you know Khalid? Khalid was with, yeah. The karate. Yeah, Khalid. So Khalid was with us, and Wali Muhammad. Did you ever know Wali Muhammad? I heard from Philadelphia. So we were there in the masjid, you know. So we said, look, we're you guys like you. I mean, we just accepted Islam a year or 2 or 3 ago. So we said, you know, so we just accepted Islam, and we're in the masjid, and we're trying to learn, you know, about Islam and all that. So why don't you join us? So what he did, he reached into his pockets. He pulled out everything. He said, look, this is everything I own in the world. So, and it's yours. Just take me with you guys. So this is guidance. This means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows this guy. So, you know, in the middle of New York City, in the middle of the most, you know, the most dangerous area of New York, you know, this Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent his guidance to this individual. And look, how he guides him from something not, you know, he didn't listen to some long discourse. He didn't read a book. He didn't, you know, he didn't have a PP presentation. He saw an action of Islam. And most of us accept Islam. You know, we have those who are academically, you know, kind of grounded, and that's how their, you know, their background is, that's how they would approach it. But for the most part, people accept Islam, and probably all our sisters back, most of them probably something like that. So, you know, very interesting story, again, from the East Coast. So we were in Washington, D.C. And you know, have you seen Washington? Have you seen that big masjid it's kind of like a museum? Have you seen that masjid? You know, all the Muslim countries put together, and Islamic Center, whatever. It's kind of, So anyway, we were staying there. And so people would not, actually Muslims were not coming there to pray. It was basically kind of a showpiece and kind of a museum, and people would come there and take pictures, you know. It was very beautiful, you know, the Iranian tiles and the Egyptian, you know, this and that and what have you. So people would come in and they would take pictures and they go. So since we can't meet any Muslims, because no Muslim wants to even talk to you, you know, Muslims don't come there. And those who do meet, they're connected with the embassies and things like that, so they don't even really want to talk to you. So what we did was those people were taking pictures. We just go up and start, by the way, you know, it's like Muslims about Islam. So we started, 28 people accepted Islam. Just who came in looking at this, you know, masjid, and then after a few, you know, a few sentences, you know, people would accept Islam. 20 people accept Islam. Among the people who accepted Islam was a fellow by the name of Yahya. He's probably somewhere in Philadelphia. I don't know if he's still alive either. But this fellow, he was a bus driver. He used to drive bus. So he came and he became a Muslim. The next day, he brought his mother and his sister and his brother. He said, okay, talk to them too. So he brought his mother and his sister and his brother, and they all accepted Islam. Now, back in those days, we've kind of changed the strategy now. But we kind of learned the hard way. So what we used to do was, when people used to accept Islam, so we used to say, okay, you know, give them the shahada and the kalim, and then, okay, these are the do's and these are the don'ts, which can be kind of overwhelming, you know. So we say, you know, you got to do this, and then you can't do this. And one thing we say, you can't drink, you can't fornicate, you know. So the mother, so everybody was cool with all of that. Now the mother, when we said, you can't do this, you can't do this, she was fine. Yeah, okay, fine. And she said, you can't drink alcohol. She froze him. So, I mean, pretty obvious that there's a problem here, right? And we can imagine what the problem is. I said, sister, you know, any issue here? She said, yeah, there's a big issue. The first day I became a Muslim, and Allah is watching me, and I'm going to say I'm not going to drink alcohol. I've been drinking alcohol every day for the past 40 years. And I'm going to stay here and tell a lie, knowing very well that I'm not going to be able to do that. She was honest. Now, interesting, Nabi Sallallahu didn't actually do that. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, right? You say, okay, say the Shahada, establish prayers, establish, you know, basic God. People of Taif, they said, okay, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that. Nabi Sallallahu said, okay, Kalima, Salat. We're having a hard time with Salat without Salat. I mean, what kind of deen is that? You got at least pray, you know. Is that okay? So anyway, so now we've got this issue. She's saying, look, I can't like to tell a lie. You know, I'm an alcoholic. How am I going to stop that? Drinking alcohol. That's a lie. I can't do that. So I said, look, sister, that's true. Probably, you know, you're not going to be able to do that yourself. But suppose Allah helps you to do it. So what I suggest is, you go back home tonight. Okay, we'll leave it at that. You've accepted Islam, and just leave that. Let's put that on the back burner for now. And you go home and just pray tonight. Get up in the night, middle of the night, and pray to Allah. And say, oh Lord, you know I can't do this. This is too much for me, but it's easy for you. So, you know, do it for me. And she left. Said, okay, I can do it. She left. So the next day she comes back and she's just as happy, right? And she's just smiling and she's just having, you know, beautiful. And so I said, okay, what happened? She said, yeah, I did what you said. I prayed to God and he helped me. I'm done. I don't need no more. Finished. Right? So the point I'm trying to make here is that, you know, we come from, you know, those of us who accept Islam as Sheikh Mikhail mentioned very correctly, we come from a very adverse And some of us come from more extreme, environments than others. But we all come from very non-Islamic backgrounds. And sometimes it seems overwhelming. How in the world are we gonna, and then everybody around us, they're not into it. And like when we first became Muslim, we didn't have people to mentor us and really tell us much. So we would accept Islam. The first thing we do, we'd, tell our family members or even our mother and father, you accept Islam. And if you don't, you're going to hell. And if you don't, and we just really alienated a lot of people. So if we look back at the way of the Prophet, we look back at the mistakes that we made, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to take us where He wants to take us. But it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, folks. Right? This is what we have to keep in mind, the whole idea of burning out. When you get burned out, you take off a bite that you take off what you can't digest. Ibn Sa'd says that the most beloved deen, or the method, or the system by which one practices deen, is the one which is consistent. Shaykh Khalid was talking about istiqamah, something you do which is consistent. The one who consistently does it, even if it's a small thing. And anything in Islam is not a small thing, it's a big thing. Everything in Islam is a big thing, right? So we have these, the ulama, they say that we have, three big major enemies. Number one, the outward enemy, Shaitan, which we heard about him, and we know much about him, and we need to learn more about him because he's been there for a long time, and he knows everybody's weaknesses, and he knows how to attack each and every type of individual. So we have that in front. Then we've got nafs, the internal enemy, which is not going to order us to do anything except wrong. It was a funny story, it's not funny actually, but it's interesting. Imam al-Ghazali mentions it. He says there was a fellow, very pious man, and his nafs told him, his nafs is lower self, nafs. So his lower self tells him, look, this year, why don't you go in jihad? Jihad. It's a tough thing to do. So this fellow thinks my nafs is telling me to go in jihad. My lower self is telling me to go in jihad, go and fight and, get myself hurt or maybe killed. This is fishy. It's not right at all. Wait a minute. Wait. You mean you want me to go in jihad, right? Yeah, exactly. Please, by all means. So, well, you know what? I'm going to be on the front line. And you know what? I'm going to try and be the first. Yeah, please do it. This is really, come on. Yeah, what's the real deal, So the nafs says, okay, look. The actual thing is that you're killing me every day, multiple times by going against. I just want you to finish me off one time, right? You go jihad, get martyred, and then get done. I can't go on with every day. So we have this lower self, which is always giving us problems, and that's part of the. It's interesting here in the United States, liberty, freedom, and the right pursuit of happiness. That's all. That's all good, right? Actually, it was originally, I don't know if you guys know this, it was originally on the right pursuit to money. Yeah, that was the original thing. But then they thought that's gross. So, let's make it a little more, noble. So let's say pursuit of happiness. Because happiness, you have a lot of money, you're happy, right? It's actually a very low proposition. Tell me something. Was the Prophet Muhammad always happy? Mutmain is a different thing. I'm satisfied, pleased with whatever position Muslim puts me in. That's another thing. But are we always happy about it? In fact, the Prophet was characterized as mutawazin ahsan. He was always concerned, worried, for others, for his own self as well. Even he used to say, "I don't know what's going to happen to me, and I'm the Prophet of Allah." Of course, the Quran is very explicit. Then you made it. There's no issue, but that's the height of taqwa. So this concept of I need to be happy. This is the way. This is the world. This is the 21st century. You know, I need to be comfortable. I'm not comfortable with that. You know, I'm not happy with that. Well, you're not here to be comfortable and happy, by the way. You know, there's nothing wrong with a little comfort and a little happiness. But that's not the objective. The objective is to please the Creator, who is going to, as a result of that, give you happiness forever and ever and ever. Forever and ever and ever. You know, you'll be happy forever, but the search of happiness and making that your objective of life, it's a very superficial objective. But that's what everybody's into. Max out, you know, live the life. We hear this, probably you've heard this. I want to live the life max. I want to live to the max. The best version of myself. Which is what? It maximize on my pleasure. Now the paradox of it is that the more you max out on pleasure, the more you need a higher high. You know. Now, people on drugs, you know, once they start on these weak drugs, and then it doesn't give them the thrill anymore. Then they need a stronger one and a stronger one and a bigger dose and a bigger dose. They think the next one, and it's a vicious cycle, which ultimately brings about their destruction. And every civilization that has made that their objective of life, there in the annals of history, destroyed. Because their objective was what? Pleasure. Happiness. The Muslim, his objective is, as Sheikh said, it's the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If Allah is pleased with us, then we're going to have everything. Okay. The last example, you know, is how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay, there's an interesting story about this lady, by the way. Yahya, her name, Yahya. Now, Yahya, Allah, may Allah not put us through this kind of trials and tribulations, but this is what happens sometimes when people become Muslim. Okay, now, Yahya became a Muslim, his mother became a Muslim, his brother, his sister, everybody in the family became a Muslim except his father. Okay. Now, we used to tell this, do this, don't do that, but we didn't used to tell somebody like in a situation like that, hey, you know what, you can't be married to a non-Muslim, by the way. You know, like with your husband, you got a husband, well, he's got to accept Islam. It's finished, which is actually the thing. But there's details connected to that. But in any case, we didn't mention it like that. And in fact, I don't even think the issue of her husband would even dawn on anybody, or was even brought up. But anyway, nothing was mentioned, and she's carrying the life and so forth. Now, she happened to be at a gathering of Muslims, and there were some other Muslim ladies. And after talking with her, they came to realize that she had become a Muslim, but her husband was a Muslim. So they said, well, that's not on. He's not your husband anymore. He has to accept Islam, or you, that's it. Which was kind of rash on their part. But in any case, they voted it. And so she went up to her husband, happily married, 30, 40 years, whatever it was. She goes up to her husband and says, look, you know, you have to accept Islam, and that's it. So he just went ballistic. He had a fit, obviously. And she said, well, that's it. And she packed up and left. Now, had we have been a bit more, happened. There's no other way that it could have been, but otherwise, probably what should have happened was those ladies shouldn't have been given that kind of advice. You know, there was this fellow that killed 99 people, and he was looking around for Toba, and he realized that it is bad. I killed 99 people. That's going to be bad. So really, I should. find repentance for that. So he went to some, pious person. He wasn't very knowledgeable. So he went to that pious person and said, hey, I killed 99 people, so is there Toba? Can I do repentance? You killed 99 people and you talk about repentance? Forget it. It's not going to happen. He said, oh yeah? Well, let's make an even 100 then. And he couldn't want to. So that ignorance was very costly for everybody involved. So you don't want to go to the people that don't know, what they're talking about, because it could be a disaster. So now this guy, I was trying to make Toba, and I killed another guy. So then he went to an mountain. He said, well, what's between you and Toba? All you have to do is do it. All you have to do is turn to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the problem is, as Sheikh said, you're living in an environment that's not conducive. Your environment is not going to let you make Toba. That's probably why he killed so many people. You had a lot of people, and he didn't say that, but that's probably what happened. So what he told him was, you need to get out of this environment where you're getting influence like this, and you need to go to the environment where there's good people who are worshiping Allah, and you go and you worship Allah with them. Now, on the way, he falls dead. So the angels of mercy and then the angels of punishment, they both come and say, hey, it's my bad. So the angels want to take him off to Jannah, the other wants to take him off to Jahannam. And it was an issue, because after all, he didn't do anything good, but at the same time, he was on his way. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent another angel in the form of a kind of a judge between them. He said, okay, let's measure the distance between where he came and where he's going. Wherever he's closer, that's where he goes. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the distance, actually, it was a little bit farther, so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made the distance a bit closer to where he was going, so that it was one hand's width closer to the way the angels took him off to paradise. Anyway, so we probably should have been, more tactful in our approach. So this is going to happen, and why I mention this also is because we face a lot of situations like that. Usually these questions come up, like we've got Christmas, we've got Easter, we got this, we got birthday party, we've got all this kind of stuff. So what do we do about that? So how do we deal with that? We have to be very careful how we deal with it, because on the one hand, we have to protect our deen. On the other hand, we have to try and be means of guidance for our people. We start, I'm making this huge rebellion against everything that our families stand for. And by the way, particularly if they're more religious families. People ask me, did you have problems with guns? I said, I didn't have any problems with my family at all. My family were all atheists and irreligious people. And the way my life was going, he said, well, anything's better than what he was doing before. So yeah, I didn't have any problem. But some of our people they have terrible problems. And if they come from more religious backgrounds, then they're going to be facing problems. We have to be very careful how we deal with that. We'll just start cutting off our ties. We're also ordered by the Quran itself to even be kind to your parents, though they not be Muslims. If they tell us worship other than Allah, we're not going to do that. There was a girl, she was a Muslim girl from Pakistan, Muslim girl. But her family was very modern and very, as they call progressively farther away from Islam as they could go. They were progressing, that was they thought progression was. So this poor girl, she became religious. She was in one of the very premier universities in Pakistan, and then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put up her heart, and she started moving towards Deen, and she put on more modest clothing, and in fact she wanted to cover her face, and so she put on what we call the niqab, right, the face covering, the veil, and her father was infuriated. And he just snatched it off her face. And he's a Muslim. So you can imagine a non-Muslim. Now this poor girl is facing this, and she's in a Muslim family. So somehow or another she got my phone. She called me up. She asked, so what do you think I should do? I said, well, on the one hand, it's a very noble thing that you want to do all these things, and you want to savor chastity and follow these, this very ideal way of life. At the same time, we cannot disrespect our parents. And when they tell us to do something which is against Sharia, then don't argue with them, but just don't do it in a way that it's possible. So like, don't walk in the house with your veil on. That's probably not going to work. And if he snatches it off and he tells you, then just take it. Just take it. But don't disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if you find yourself in a situation where you can wear that and your father's not going to be, coming down on you, then, so be it. But we're going to have to, in these kind of situations, we have to be very careful because, as we said, it's a marathon. You want your families to come into Islam. You don't want to run away from Islam. So for that, like I said, I remember when I first came to Muslim, I was in Africa, Middle East, where I came back and I was just blasting everybody. And it was detrimental, And but later on, we learned that actually it's actions that are going to bring people towards Deen. And so, I'll just give another interesting story, kind of various places. When I was a student in Makkah, there was a lady. She was a friend of my wife. And by the way, how much time? As much as you. How much did I have? I don't know how much time I have. That's not like a remote comes. That's no limit. That's how much time I have. Fair. So while I was a student there, we had a lady. Her name was Miriam. She was from Germany. And a lot of us before Islam were musicians. I was a musician. The first shula that we had in Tabligh, there were 3 women musicians. Luqman, Abdul this useless fellow. Yeah. It was very, very interesting. We all people, and Luqman, accepted Islam on the bandstand in the bar. Yeah. In the bar, and the bandstand playing, there was a fellow by the name of Hassan Abdul Hamid, who also introduced me to my wife in State Street, Masjid Furqaan. So he's the one that gave Shahadat Luqman. In the bar on the band. This is how Islam, we started off in this country. So, so Miriam. So we'll go back to Makkah. So in Makkah, there was this lady. She was a former musician in a lot of musicians actually, just to know about this, because there's a few interesting historical facts that people don't know. Some of the earliest Muslims in this country were jazz musicians. We had Yusuf Latif, we had Ahmed Jamal, and McCoy Tyner. We had a lot of these individuals who have, passed away. Some of them a long time ago. Look, why used to play for these kind of people. And we also, the music, what is known as rap now. The original rap was actually a Muslim group called the Last Poets. And I don't know, there's one of Suleiman, I don't know if Suleiman Abdul is still alive or not. Last I heard, he was still alive. But these guys were back in the 60s. And nobody knew about them, actually, because they were like an underground kind of a thing. And only people who were into that kind of a thing, yeah, they were into that. And it was quite a different thing. But it was all about social justice and, and all this kind of these issues, And they were the precursors, and there wasn't such a thing as rap, but these guys, they were actually poets, and behind them, they were the first, people of that genre. And so these are the first people to accept Islam, musicians, artists. And I don't know if you people follow Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad in England. Sheikh Abdul Hakim Murad, he's got these biographies of these. There's something new Muslims say, it's kind of a revert, whatever is politically correct these days, should see this. He's got some of these biographies of these amazing people who've accepted Islam. I'm talking about anarchists. There was an anarchy movement back in the end of the 19th century. And you had these avant-garde dancers and poets and literary figures, particularly in Europe. And these were all Europeans from England, you had from France. You had these avant-garde dancers. This woman, she was like, you can imagine, this avant-garde dancing. And she ended up in a burqa with a veil, like you see the ladies in Afghanistan. Amazing, amazing. So the people of the arts and the people of they have sensitive hearts, they have sensitive minds, and they're very towards Islam. So this lady Miriam, she's a musician. She gets fed up. I think it's kind of like what happened to me. A lot of us, we just sort of saw that things are just really, it's just insane what's going on in the world. We're looking for something else. So she started traveling around the world. She went to Europe. She did the Thieves in Spain, and then she went down to North Africa. Very similar route that I took also. She ended up in Egypt, and in Egypt she became a Muslim. And she's traveling alone, by the way. She's all by herself. Then she said, okay, I'm a Muslim now, I want to go to Makkah. She goes to Makkah, and she lives in Haram Sharif for the next 4 years. Can you believe that? And let me tell you something, folks. The Haram in those days was not like the Haram you see today. It wasn't like, air conditioning and fans and all that. It was tough. In the summer, it was boiling hot. And in the winter, you have these mosquitoes. The most painful mosquitoes I've ever seen in my life are in Makkah. Used to be, you don't see those anymore. But back in the day, that's how it was. So this lady, Miriam, she lives in the Haram. There was an Afro-American brother, his name was Abdul Qudus, New York. He comes to Makkah. And so they get married. And they live in a little tin shack. Now imagine this. Where those of you who've been in Haram, when you come out of the Haram and you're going towards Mina, now you got this tunnel that goes through the mountain. Yeah. Right? The Nafaq, they call it. There wasn't any of those in those days. So they had this tin shack on top of that mountain. There's no water. There's no electricity. Right? And they live in a tin shack. Can you imagine 50 degrees, like about 115, 120 degrees out, and you're living in a tin shack? It's like an oven. On top of that, Sister Miriam, she used to say to her husband, she said, look, you're a Muslim, and you sleep all night, and you eat all day long. In other words, you're supposed to be up all night praying and all day fasting. And it was just too much for the poor guy. He couldn't take it. He said, okay, he went, kind of went mad, Poor guy, he had to take off. And then this woman, so now there was another fellow who showed up some years later. His name was Abdullah Siraj from France. So this fellow, he was a film director, film producer, actually. So he was somewhere in North Africa, doing some kind of film. And as he's doing this film, a group of these Mauritanians come by. And they had their sheikh and their murid or some sheikh there, some teacher there. And he just caught a glimpse of them, and he was very curious to know about them. He went and started talking to them, and then he became a Muslim. And then he said, okay, I'm going with you guys. He's the producer of the film. He's got his whole crew, and he's got all of his equipment, he's got the whole thing. And he said, no, I'm going with these guys. What about you make your film? I'm going off with these guys. So he went off to the desert of Mauritania and spends the next 10 years in the tent. We went to the madrasa, we thought that was pretty tough, right? Dal chow, what have you. This guy's under the tent in the middle of the Mauritanian desert for the next 10 years, And then their sheikh dies, and then after the sheikh dies, they start, the murids, the students, they start going to various places, and a lot of them came to Makkah. So he comes to Makkah with him. So he meets up with Maryam, And so we've got Hassan al-Basri, meets Rabia Basriya, and mashallah, they live happily ever after. I don't know what happened to them. I lost track of them. They're just amazing. I mean, anything that Sahaba used to do, they'd read anything in hadith. You go into their house, and number one, they'd have a nida. You know, we have this generally, because of our influence of India and Pakistan and Iran and other places, Afghanistan, whatever. Usually have what this dasrakhan with the maida and sufra, but actually the sunnah is nida. It's a piece of leather, it's a piece of skin. That's what they used to eat on. So when you go to the house of Abdullah Siraj and Miriam, then you would eat on a piece of a leather tablecloth. And when you'd enter into their house, just like you read in the hadith of Abu Hurairah, when the bowl of milk comes, and then Abu Hurairah slowly has to go and give everybody a drink, and then you get the last drink. And so that's what they do. They have this big clay bowl, and they put milk in it, and they send it around to everybody. I mean, you just go in there, it's just amazing. I've never seen, born Muslims living like that, and they were just amazing. I don't know what happened to them. I've seen them a long time. Every time I go to Mecca, they left, they're still alive now. So these are people who accepted Islam, and but I'm not going to advise that we take that kind of extremity, because otherwise you're going to get burned out. Like my poor friend Abdul Qaddus, he couldn't take it. So, I mean, you're going to have these kind of individuals that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, has given them that kind of tawfiq. But that's really rare. Most of us, we need to go step by step, slow by slow. And keep in mind that it's our actions that are really, as they say, actions speak much louder than words. So there's a couple more just stories of how people accept Islam. And I don't know if you know Dr. Abdurazak Sikandar. Did you know? 2008. Yeah. So actually, when I used to be when I first went to Pakistan, I was really there in Benuli town. So yeah, he was Mudir of Ta'aleem. Anyway, so he told me the story that he heard in England. So in Heathrow Airport, right, one of the most busy airports in the world, right? So there was a Malaysian couple, Malaysian or Indonesian, I forget which. And they were praying some corner of the airport. So some English woman is walking by, and everybody's in hustle bustle, in these kind of airports like New York or JFK or any of these, SFO for that matter. So you can imagine in Heathrow. So this woman is rushing, and she just happens to look and sees this couple praying. It just blew her away. She said, I have to meet these people. That's just amazing. I mean, everybody's just so involved in their whatever. And these people are praying to God. I mean, this is awesome. I really have to meet these people. So she goes up and she waits for them to finish their prayers, and then she, introduces herself and shakes the hand of the woman. I just want to shake your hand, meet you. She wants to shake the hand of the man. So the man says, my sister, actually, since I have married my wife here, this hand is reserved only for her. And this woman, like we're usually afraid, if I don't shake the hand, there's going to be a social, backlash, This woman just overwhelmed. And she accepted Islam on the spot. So this is how most of the people accept Islam. So our actions, our character, our politeness, our acting like human beings, that's what Islam is all about. It's a fitrati. It's a fitrati. It's a natural way of life. We are living a totally unnatural way of life, particularly here in the West, and people are, bent out of shape, literally. And so their intrinsic nature, what we call fitrah, when it sees what a human being is really about, what he's really supposed to be, it resonates with the inner self. And this inner self, if it's not totally blackened, it recognizes that it's overwhelmed.
There's another interesting story that Dr. Razak. Again in England. A very interesting story. It's kind of a little bit gross, but nevertheless, it's very interesting. So the woman who does the laundry for the students, so you got this university of the students, right? And the students, they have their laundry every week. The lady that does the laundry, she comes and picks it up and takes it and washes the clothes for them. And usually the underclothing is not really very, it doesn't smell very good. Now, very interestingly, this woman noticed that somebody, their underwear is not like everybody else's. Very interesting. I mean, and every time it happens, she's it's just very starkly different than whoever this individual is. Their underwear is very clean. And this intrigues her. So then she kind of tracks it and traces it down. Who does this belong to? What's this person doing? Yeah, really. So she actually finds this and says it's a Muslim student. And then, she says, look, this is kind of like personal, but can you tell me why is it that your underwear is different than everybody else's? I mean, what do you mean? Because it doesn't spray. So, well, I'm a Muslim and we must wash ourselves, She was so astounded by that. And, for us Muslims, people are born up, and raised in that. That's not a big deal. I remember the first time I actually did that because we're not Muslim. We never had that. Yeah. I was in Morocco, a place called Essaouira. And this is before I accepted Islam on that trip. And the first time that was like a revelation. Right? Why didn't I think of this before? This is amazing. It's such a simple thing. And Muslim, like Muslims pray. Anyway, that woman, she came by, needless to say, she accepted Islam just on that because of somebody's clean underwear. She accepts Islam. So don't think anything is small. And another thing, particularly for our brothers and sisters who are Muslims and they grew up every day, watching people making salat and fasting and all that kind of thing. But for somebody who's never seen salat, you can't imagine how amazing that is. Myself, I've lived with Muslims now for the past 1 year, traveling across North Africa. But in North Africa, a non-Muslim doesn't go into the masjid because it was taboo. In the Maliki Madhab, actually, they frown on that. And they have their proofs for that. In any case, I always wanted to see Muslims praying because actually I was in all these different spiritual kind of things even before I was a Muslim. And I was always intrigued by, So finally in Sudan, I'm between Egypt and Sudan in this boat. There was a group of Sudanese camel traders. They were Bedouins. And they used to go to Sudan and sell their camels, and they would come back. In Egypt, they'd sell their camels, they'd come back to Sudan. So myself and this other fellow, who was another musician, we were traveling on our way to Ethiopia. That's a long story, we'll move on that. But anyway, this group of Sudani camel traders, they call Adhan and they make their salat in Jamaat. And now all these brothers are saying, yeah, okay, yeah, big deal. It was a big deal. It was the biggest deal I've ever seen. Because Allahu Akbar. And all these are, I know these guys are from the desert dwellers, living in mud huts. And these fellows stand up in a line like you won't see a military stand up like that. I'm just looking at this. Allahu Akbar. And all of them and we're on a boat, by the way. It was like a Mark Twain kind of boat with a paddle wheel on the back. It was like 30,000 years old. It was amazing. Yeah. And we've got people and cargo and animals, and these people are just totally focused. It was nothing about it. And then Allahu Akbar. And then like one body into the ruku. I'm just looking at this. Now, if you've seen Jews or Christians pray, it's nothing like that. The Jews are a little bit closer, but it's nothing like that. They don't have Jamaat and they don't do that. this is not only this concentration, but the collectivity of it. Mind-boggling. So by the time again, when they went into sajda together, that's it. That's it. Whatever religion that's in, that's it. And I know what religion that is. So our actions, these actions of Islam are so powerful, you know. And so, you know, we don't have to do a lot of talking. We don't have to coercing. We don't have to, you know, try and debate with people, you know. But if we live the life of Islam, that's the greatest guidance. Think about this. In the early history of Islam, it wasn't like, you know, a few people accepted Islam here and there. Sahaba would move from place to place, and whole regions would accept Islam. Now, how did that happen? It wasn't, you know, it was simply they were, you know, it was a military campaign, and these poor people were forced, and they were at the sword. Of course, that didn't happen. Proof of that is that even when Islam was left, there was no longer Muslim. These people never left their Islam, despite the fact that they didn't speak Arabic, and the Sahaba didn't speak the languages of those people. So how in the world did they accept Islam? Because they saw Islam. And that's what our deen is. Our Islam is submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Enter into submission totally. Sheikh was talking about. That's every aspect of life. Every sector of our life, every activity of our life, there's guidance. Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says, if Allah wants good for somebody, He guides him, He makes them knowledgeable of religion, meaning what? Teaches him how to live a life of servitude. A life of servitude. Ibadat are ritual worships, and those ritual worships, why are they the pillars of Islam? Buniyal Islam ala khams. Islam is built on 5 pillars. Kalima, saying the kalima, praying, fasting, hajj, and zakat, right? So what about, you know, halal, haram? What about jihad? What about tabligh? What about halal, haram? What about sharia? What about all these other things? Government, you know, penal codes. None of that's mentioned. Because Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says Islam is built on these pillars. It doesn't say Islam is these pillars, it's built on these pillars. In other words, these ibadat train us to become submissive, to become attentive, become obedient. It trains us. Salat, greatest training, 5 times a day. Every part of us is being trained to be obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inwardly, outwardly, every part. So therefore, the first thing Nabi alayhi salatu wasalam would teach people after they accept Islam, wudu, because we have to be clean to enter into salat, and in salah. So brothers and sisters, especially our sisters in the back, you know, that salat is, you know, subhanAllah. And I remember when I first became a Muslim, those salats in the early, probably all of us have the same experience, those early salats, you know, it was surreal, you know. And we are like keep us, you know, in that kind of in focus and that kind of look. But so working on our salat, you know, and patterning our life on this salat, and you know, and all these other actions, fasting, zakat, hajj, these are all training us with our persons, with our wealth, getting control of ourselves. Now Ramadan is coming, right? Great opportunity for us, you know. And so again, all of these things we take with a grain of salt, and let's, you know, undertake, you know, first of all, let's try and slowly move all the haram, definite haram things out of our life, find out what we're doing that's really not acceptable. And with a sustainable program, try and take an inventory of what we're doing in our lives that really we need to remove. Go to knowledgeable people. Don't go to the, you know, the mufti that got himself killed, right? Go to somebody that knows exactly what they're talking about, and with someone with experience of life and of deen. And how do how do we deal with these situations? You can have situations with your families. I know all of you are having situations with your families. This is, definite. How do we deal with these situations? What's the limits? We need to learn about that. Not time to talk about all these things, but when situations come up, and this is how Sahaba learned. By the way, there was no madrasa during the time of Sahaba. There wasn't a university. What happened is that it was a very organic system. Men would come to the masjid, and then they would go back and teach their women and their children and people. They would, by things would happen, they would come and ask the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. This is how they learned. We don't have to, cut ourselves off from everything and go for the next decade somewhere in a foreign country, even or whatever. We now, when we became Muslims, you had to, because there was nothing here. If you want to learn anything, as I said, there was one qari of one hafid of Quran in the country. But now we have all these facilities here. So if we have issues in our life, we have issues with our family, we have issues, we have internal struggles, and we all have those things. Go to the people who are knowledgeable in deen and knowledgeable with life experience, and and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will help you in that through the others. And as Shaykh said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala orders us to remain with the righteous people, right? Good company. I have just keep that there's a little expression that I use. I say connect with the connected and disconnect with the disconnected. Okay. Connect with the connected. The people who are connected with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, connect with them as much as you can, which is sustainable. Don't, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So, have have a system, have a pattern in your life on a weekly basis, on a daily basis, on a monthly basis. Gatherings that we attend, there's so many resources that we can avail that we didn't have before, So something that's sustainable for you all, learn, as the Sheikh said, every aspect of our life, there's guidance, but we have to learn that, right? And it doesn't mean we have to cut off everything else and spend the rest of our time, totally connected with books and nothing else. As we approach issues, situations in life, go to the other people and learn. We've got, gatherings in the masjids, we have tafsir classes, we have hadith classes, we have fit classes, we have various types of counseling and mentorships going on. And if we don't, then our masjid should, be about, developing programs like that. And also I would add that every masjid here, anywhere, but particularly here in the United States, we should have a particular program for the people who are accepting Islam, to teach them, to mentor them, to help them in all sorts of ways. This is the main thing that happened back, half a century ago. When we became Muslims, they didn't have any resources like that. So many people accepted Islam, and so many of them left Islam. Because there wasn't facilities to, bring them in and take them in. Did you know that in the early days, this was the system? And this is part of our Sharia. If somebody accepts Islam on your hand, you're responsible for it. And we have a thing called wala al-Islam. And there's a possibility that he's going to inherit from you and you from him, if there's no other higher hierarchy, in the inheritance chain. That's how serious it was. And in fact, in that case, the name would become, you say, Sayyidina Bukhari, the greatest of muhaddithin, al-Ju'fi. Ju'fi what? Because his ancestors accepted Islam on the hands of that particular tribe, and they took on the names. They became part of the family. So this is how it's supposed to happen. People come and they become Muslim. They're now our family. So we have to treat them like family. And this is how it used to be. So I would again emphasize, that we've got issues, we've got so many challenges in front of us. But look, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if he takes us to something, he's going to take us to. One of my friends says, if Allah takes you to it, he's going to take you through it. La yukallifu Allahu nafsan illa wus'aha. Allah doesn't give a burden to anybody that they can't bear. So whatever challenge we have, Number one, it's bearable, otherwise Allah wouldn't give it. It may seem unbearable, totally outside, a possibility. But as I mentioned, that lady, I'm a 30-year-old alcoholic. That fellow's an 8-year, heroin addict. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a moment cured them of those problems. And he's Qadir Mutlaq. He can do whatever he wants, however he wants, with anyone he wants. So that's the one thing, is that we're going to have challenges, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to give us challenges that we can't bear. Second thing is, and this is very important, brothers and sisters, that many times we face things that seem to be, it really even shakes our faith. How can Allah be doing it? For example, the people in Gaza, our brothers and sisters in Gaza, what's happening to them? This is the most unreal, surreal thing in memorable history. A genocide with everyone's got a front row seat. And we're saying, how can we let this happen? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of all knows. And all of our brothers and sisters who are going through this thing, what they're going through. It's not that the first people have gone through that. Maybe I didn't give a story. We don't have time for that. But there's so many stories of the people who came previously, very similar situations. And those people who are going through these trials and tribulations, when they see on the day of judgment what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to be given to them, they would have been asked, now, on the day of Qiyamah, the person who was enjoying the best, like we talked in the very beginning of our talk, the person who had the maximum of the benefits and the pleasures and the pleasures of the world from among the people of Kufr. He'll be wrong. One dunk in Jahannam and out. Like you Dunkin' Donuts, one time in and out. Yeah. And then it will be said, Ya Ibn Adam, oh son of Adam, did you see any good time? You remember those pleasures and leisures, and people before, they lived thousands, maybe 1,000 years, hundreds of years. And Sayyidina Nuh alayhi salam, 950 years, came down. He must have lived more than 1,000 years. So can you imagine somebody for centuries, the most pleasurable life that one could imagine? One dunk in Jahannam, it's all forgotten. What's the point? Now you're facing an eternity in the fire of Jahannam. What was the point? Where was the pleasure? I'm juxtaposed. Person who was suffering the maximum. Really saw some said, look, Sahabas, they complained, and Ya Rasulullah, Ya Rasulullah, pray for you see what's happening to us. Said the Khabab, Bilal, people are getting tortured, they're being dragged across coals, and they're being dragged in the streets, they're being set out in the hot sun with rocks on their head, on their chests. And Nabi Rasul is sitting in the shade of the Kaaba on his shawl, and he sits up. He says, look, people came before, and hot combs of iron would be placed in the fire, red hot. And they would slowly peel the skin off of this is exactly what's happened to our people in Gaza today, right? These bombs are doing the same thing, basically. They would take these combs and just comb this hot, just tear the flesh slowly off of their bones and say, die this death or leave Islam. They didn't leave Islam. A fellow would be brought and put in a hole. They would put a saw in his head and just start cutting slowly. Leave your deen or you're going to be cut in 2 pieces. They didn't leave their deen. وَلَكِنَّكُمْ قَوْمٌ تَسْتَعْجِلُونَ. But you're people, you're hasty. Allah's going to do what He wants to do, when He wants to do it, how He wants to do it. And so those of our brothers and sisters in Gaza, in West Bank, or wherever they might be, Burma or Kashmir, wherever they happen to be, those who have actually been taken by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, accepted as martyrs, I can guarantee you, if betting was jaiz in Islam, I'd bet. But I can guarantee, because we know it from Quran and Hadith. Those people who have Allah accepted their martyrdom, I can guarantee you, if they were asked, would you like to come back to the world and do it again? And this time we'll give you a 5-acre plot in Beverly Hills. Swimming pool, tennis court, every facility that you can, and we'll set you up for the rest of your natural life. We'll trade it for what you have now. I can guarantee you, not a single one will be ready to listen to the proposition. Everybody else has to wait to go to Jannah. They're already there. They're already in paradise, enjoying, right? So that's what this life is about. This life is about getting there. It's reaching there, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is pleased. And as the Sheikh mentioned, the angel saying, well done, enter, you know, subhanAllah. You've done well, enter a life of bliss for eternity. Eternity is longer than we can imagine. It's not 1,000,000 years. It's not 1,000,000,000 years. It's not 1,000,000,000,000. Eternity, it never ends. Not only never ends, it keeps getting better and better and better. But that's what we're here to do. And so, as we said, it's a marathon, you know, until the last ramaq. Ya alladhina amanu ittaqullah wa la tamutunna illa wa antum muslimun. Don't die except as Muslims. How are we going to do that? By living Islam until the end. And how do we do that? Short, constant, measured, you know, determined steps. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us all tawfiq. And sorry I bent everybody's ears with the lot of extra curricular type of talk, but perhaps it might be beneficial to us. At least it reminds me, and it kind of encourages me to remember that how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's favor is so great upon all of us. He's brought us to this gathering upon this particular topic and subject. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, adada khalqihi wa rida nafsihi wa zinata arshih kalimati. Allahumma la nursi dhara alayka anta kama sayyid ala nafsik. Salli wa sallim wa barik ala sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali sayyidina Muhammad wa sallit wa sallim wa barik ala Ibrahim wa ala ali Ibrahim innaka Hamidum Majid. Allahumma rabbana zalamna anfusana wa lam taghfir lana لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا الظالمين. لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا الظالمين. اللهم ربنا اغفر لنا ذنوبنا وإسرافنا في أمرنا وانصرنا. اللهم اشرح صدورنا للإسلام وحبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا راشدين. يا مقلب القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على دينك. ويا مصرف القلوب ثبت قلوبنا على طاعتك. ويا منور القلوب نور قلوبنا بنور معك. يا حي يا قيوم برحمتك استغيث اصلح لنا شأننا كله ولا تكلنا الى انفسنا طرفة عين ان تكلنا الى انفسنا تكلنا الى ضعف القلوب خطيئة وان لا نهتدي الا برحمتك وارحمنا برحمتك الا بها برحمة ايمان سواك. اللهم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذرياتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. ربنا هب لنا من لدنك الرحمة وهب لنا رشدا. اللهم ربنا إنا نسألك خير ما سألك نبيك سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه سيدنا محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم. أنت المستعان وعليك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. اللهم ربنا تقبل منا صالح الدعاء إنك أنت السميع العليم وتب علينا يا إنك أنت التواب الرحيم. صلى الله عليه وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما. سبحان ربك